at the clock signal only. Why we are looking only at a clock signal isolated from any other thing? Because clock is again a signal which is traveling through a line, an interconnect. Why are we treating it in a different fashion? Why the distribution requires us a completely different treatment? What's the point in that? We're discussing it so separately. So it has some special properties. The reason is that it has some special properties. That is why it needs a special treatment. And what is that special property? These are nothing but a signal which is constantly ticking, which is constantly changing. So probability of switching is 1. Highest changing signal. Okay? And then it is heavily loaded. Maximum load on it, because if it is a synchronous system design, every single gate will be a clocked gate. If it is not a gate, it would be a flip-flop. So there would be a huge capacitive loading on this, and it is switching constantly. That means power consumption will be tremendous. So I now, because it is a huge C coming up, huge capacitive load, delays are also. So a clock signal has to travel through a wire. There would be a lot of power consumption, there would be a lot of delay involved. And clock is something that determines the final output, because we are looking for T period, and T clock period is nothing but it is a component of T skew. There is a T skew delta comes in. If I have to know for the T to be lesser, I control. Zeta is mainly because of the generation unit. Skew is mainly because of the propagation design. The skew or the signal propagation design. How do you propagate? So skew is a it's a spatial. It has a spatial because of spatial nature of distribution, and zeta is a temporal variation. How arrival of the clock edge? That is mainly because of the counters. Counters are changing because of discrete nature. Sometimes counter comes because it cannot be 8.7. It has either 8 or it can be 9. So there is a resolution error in that. So we get a zeta. We do not get an edge coming always at the same instant of time. That causes zeta to happen. If you are going for an all digital design of a PL. If you are going for an analog PL, I can have the arrival edge to be very close to nominal always. But this is not true for a all digital PL. Where normally you count till 8 and then the edge goes low. Or you count till 16, then the edge goes low. And there is always a difference. Whenever you start counting, there is always a difference. So it has to either stop at 6 or stop at 7 or at 10 or 9. You cannot have an in-between values. So it is loaded to the greatest fan out, travels over the longest distances and operates at the highest speed of any signal. That is why it is a special signal. It is a special signal. That is why it is treated differently. And whenever we have a skew, so the most common thing that comes across is a skew. Whenever you distribute, the problem comes in skew. Skew is maybe because of various reasons. Load mismatch, supply mismatch, device mismatch. Skew can have various reasons. Temperature mismatch can also be the reason for that. But major component is coming from these three. So we try to we try to focus more on these things. So device mismatch is normally when we have buffers in between a clock interconnect. We try to have them as a matched devices. Try to have them go for common centroid geometries, go for a kind of a common the multi-gate fingered layouts. Okay, supply mismatch, try to have the supply rails or deviations in supply, try to minimize it as far as possible, use techniques for minimizing supply mismatch. Load mismatch, we take care of it while doing our CDN design. So this is done at the interconnect network design. Supply mismatch, you have to look for the power rails so that there is no variation happening at different instant of time. Okay, and then device mismatches. Normally, supply mismatches, very common strategies that you have a wider supply rails, so that resistance is minimal possible. Resistance of the power rails is minimum possible. Roughly, all power lines, they are at the same potential. They should behave like a same equipotential region. I should not have a drop across the power length of the power rail. We should not. So normally these are the widest interconnects, power rails. These are the widest interconnects. And even if there is a dip, there is a fluctuations coming, we try to minimize. And a very common method for minimizing the you can say the dips coming in the supply is through RC filtering. That is, whenever your VCC or VDD is having a dip, so dip is nothing but a transient signal. It is made to filter across this RC filter. So that this point, which is VCC minus IR, gives you a dip which is much lesser than the 10%. It's a very, very common function where C may be a larger value, so that every transient signal gets filtered out. So that this signal is more or less a constant value, but then you are generating a steady state power supply from a VDD signal through an RC network. A very common way of generating a stabilized power supply, but then you can have power regulator arrangements also to minimize on the supply voltage fluctuations. So LDO is one such example. Low dropout supply. LDO, design of a LDO, you all have done LDO? I gave you one of the project in analog. That was for analog? That was for the previous LDO design. Low dropout. We try to have the minimum drop. That is, whenever you have a supply, should be as much stabilized as possible. So, now how do we take care of the load mismatch? Load mismatch is actually the design issue that we come across whenever we design a clock distribution network. We try to have uniform loading as far as possible. So we have to now evolve a strategy, how to distribute the clock. Aim is always to minimize on the skew. But then you cannot minimize skew everywhere on the entire chip. It is not possible. It is not possible. So we actually come across the two types of skews. That is a local skew and the global skew. We actually come across this. The local skew and the global skew. Now, usually I do not have multiple clock sources. So normally we are given the bounds. Okay, this much is permissible clock skew. This much is permissible clock jitter. So we have to now distribute within that bounds. Okay, and how do we design? Because we have to start with a strategy. We have to start with a strategy. We always try to have equipotential clocking. That means the entire CDN comes to the same potential of the clock signal at any instant. At any instant. But then it is not possible. You cannot have. It is not, because there is a clock distribution, there is a distributed effects coming to picture, RC effects. I cannot have the signal traveling suddenly with the speed of light. It's not possible. That within no time the entire CDN comes to the same potential. It is not possible. So skew is always there. So equipotential clocking is something which is difficult to achieve. But we can achieve the performance within a certain bound, within certain specific spatial bound. And that we try to achieve, and that is mainly done. So usually we have a single clock source. Here it is shown at the bottom. You may have it in the center also. These may be different blocks. There may be different sub-blocks. Within every sub-block you may have a module. Within every module you may have various sub-modules. So that means from here, first reaches to each and every block. The signal has to travel to this block, this block, this block, every block. Every block you need to make a distribution of this clock signal. Then within each block, you have to further have a clock distribution network within that clock. So go on replicating down and down. So in how many ways you can do it for the different clock distribution networks, this is what we are going to be looking at it. Okay. So normally you will say, okay, if you are having RC, if you want to minimize on skew and you want to have a minimum skew, that is minimum delay. And minimum delay means try to have as much wider R as possible. Have a wider width. Okay, R is, that is reduced by having a larger R. Rho L by A. A is W into height. W you can increase, have a wider wire. But then remember, wider wire means a wider capacitance also. So if you are increasing R, you will also be increasing C. So beyond a certain point, you cannot have increase in width. That is not permissible. It will not give you any advantage. So we normally scaling up. If you are not scaling down, because you scale down, resistance will be increasing. Resistance will be increasing. And if you scale up, capacitance would be increasing. So normally the trend is that we do not scale interconnects. Whenever there is a scaling happening down the technology, normally most of the time the clock interconnect is not scaled. It is sometimes it may be scaled up, but only at some, depending on the requirements. It may be scaling up. Scaling down is rough. Sometimes it is not done. It is not advisable to go for it. As I said, there are two skews now. Because skew, you cannot maintain skew throughout the CDN. It is not possible. So we look at, try to find out where the skew is more crucial. And the skew is crucial between two neighboring blocks. If two widely separated blocks we are looking at, they are not communicating, I don't care whether edge of the clock comes here first and edge of the clock comes here little later. As far as the sister pipeline is working fine, it is correct for me even to have the clock edge arriving at this block little later. But the two blocks which are very close to each other, they are communicating with each other. Then the data transfer should be correct. And then the two blocks, they should have the clock edge arrival at the same instant of time. So local skew is what is really most important. Global skew, that means global skew is not important. No, global skew is also important, because then it usually gives you the top level specifications. That is, okay, the permissible skew overall is this value. So for local value, we have to manage our skew within that bound, within that spatial bound. But for a perfect data transfer and no problem, we need to look at the local skews. But local skew guidelines comes from the global skew. So local skew is very, very important. So here is how do we now route. So zero skew routing is the ideal thing. And as we say, we usually do not get a zero skew routing. That means across the CDN, clock edge arrives at the same instant of time. It is not. So the most common approach is a buffered clock tree. Okay, a buffered clock tree. What is a buffered clock tree? This is a buffered clock tree. Or a clock tree. We create a clock tree. That means I have a PLL over here, and then it has to be distributed to these 3 points. Here I am showing only 3 points. But there may be multiple of locations. Every point, maybe every destination point can be a flip-flop if it is a pipeline, data pipeline. Every flip-flop will be a destination point. So I will call my flip-flop as the leaves of the tree. Then the root will be a PLL, and in between will be trunk and branches. That is why it is given a name, a tree. And you can say it only moves in a forward fashion. The clock tree only spans, it only expands in a forward way, only in the one way. It doesn't spans in the all 4 directions. Okay. So a very common, and all other, you will see all other variants, all our different clock trees, they are you can say in some way, they are a variant of this buffered clock tree, which is a very basic clock distribution network. A fundamental clock distribution network. Rest all are actually derived from this one. They are derived from it. Okay. So very simply I understand. So here I have shown you 3 levels, and you can assume multiple levels also. You can very well imagine multiple leveled clock tree. And remember, as I said, matching of the load is going to be the prime objective of this class. Because we have seen that one of the sources for clock skew is a mismatch loading. So I want to now make the loading same. This will be my design strategy in order to get the skew between this and this point within some spatial bound, or the clock arrival here and the clock arrival here should be at the same instant of time to get a zero skew routing. But even if it is not zero skew routing, I can say, okay, between this and this, permissible clock skew is say 0.1 nanoseconds. So within 0.1 nanoseconds, I should get my clock edge happening at this point as well as this point. So these are the inputs which are finally given to the circuits. So you can think of multiple level clock tree as shown here, where you can see a clock tree, a PLL over here, a clock tree going down, and also from here itself a clock tree spanning upwards. So two different clock trees, one spanning upwards and one expanding downwards. So source is common. Source is common. And we can see that roughly every, at this level the fan out is 2, at this level also the fan out is 3, at this level the fan out is 3. So we decide what will be my fan out. Every node will be driven or will be driving 3 more nodes or 2 more nodes or only 1 node. That is what we need to decide whenever we design a clock tree. And whenever there is a tree, whenever there is a design of buffers, then we need to understand what are the locations at which a buffer has to be introduced. So first thing you decide is a fan out at every node and the location of the buffer, at what point you will be hitting the buffer. And how do you decide? How do you decide about the location and the fan out depending on the major spec that is coming from global skew about the or permissible clock skew, within the permissible clock skew. We shall be doing a very simple example where I will show you the design steps using simple model, that is we have Elmore's delay formula, because this is what is known to me. But nowadays the CDN design is very, very complex and usually it is all done automatically. Usually we have a softwares which keep on looking the clock skew at every point, calculating and then trying to change the length, the buffer insertion point, so that every time, unless till the point that the skew comes within. Because I cannot manually route the clock distribution network to millions and millions of gates. It's not possible. It is usually done through a software, through a CAD tool. So, as I said that to reduce naturally, I cannot have a single PLL driving the entire network. That will be taking infinite amount of time to charge, because the C loading for a CDN or for a PLL will be tremendous. It will be tremendous, and we all know that we have to, because length is largest. The clock distribution wire is going to be routing from one corner to next corner to the third corner. The largest length will be there, and we know the delay is increasing to L square. I have to intersperse it with buffers or drivers. We call them as clock drivers. Okay, so we have to intersperse buffers in between, and buffers, they not only cut down on the delay, they also provide amplification. That means if your signal is getting more sloppy, it amplifies and make it more speed, thereby giving you a very clean and sharp clock signals for the next segment as the signal moves forward. So it helps you, as we know from logical effort also, that a buffer, which is nothing but an inverter, has the best logical effort G and has the best parasitic effort VIN. Okay, so it is a minimum complexity, it gives you a better result. It's a simplest possible gate. So when you are using inverters as a buffer, they not only work like an amplifier, they also give you a very clean and sharp clock signals moving forward in a clock distribution. Okay. And what is the meaning of this isolating the clock nets from upstream? That means you are segmenting the entire distribution network into various segments, and in between you are placing the buffer. Means the upper segment load now is not connected to the first segment, which is actually load for my PLL. So PLL will be driving only a section of the link. Then the buffer will come, buffer will be driving the next section of the link. Then the third buffer will come, it will drive in the third section of the link. So can you see, as if I am splitting the load among different. There's not a single driver which is running the entire load, which is driving the entire load. So I'm distributing the task of driving the entire load among different drivers. As a result, we are able to save on time. That is why we say that delay gets reduced. And I think we all know now what's the best way to determine the segment length, optimum length, after which we should put a buffer. What is that? There is an L critical. There is an L critical. Okay, and I know, you all know interconnect delay, it has a U-shaped behavior. So there's a minimum point. On this side also the delay increases. On this side also the delay increases. On this side, you should not put too many buffers. And on this side, you should not have the length of the segments larger than a certain L critical. And what is that formula, L critical? Root of 0.38. We did it last time. Critical, L critical. T buffer by 0.4 RC under root. TB means T buffer. T buffer. T buffer by 0.38 RC whole under root. So we should not. We should as far as possible. So I will now be deciding my segment length depending on my response. Where T buffer would be known to me, resistance per unit length of my interconnect is known to me, and capacitance per unit length of the interconnect is known to me. So I shall be using, or a thumb rule says that okay, if you don't have a formula, thumb rule means whenever a segment delay is equal to the buffer delay, you more or less take that segment length and put a buffer after that. A thumb rule. It's a very thumb rule. Okay. So now, if I state I think this all is known to us. Okay, interspersing the buffer, the delay of the total clock line now changing. So let me not repeat that. L value, okay, and then an example to show that. Example, this is a three-dimensional view of the skew. Okay, now this is a variant of, as I said, clock tree is the most fundamental way. So you can have a variant of it. Aim is to minimize on the skew. So what is this? It's known as a mesh clock tree. It is a variant. How does it help? How does it help in reducing the skew? It is called as a mesh clock tree. You are having too many parallel paths. All the paths are interconnected. They are now parallel paths. So parallel path means now to this node, the signal is arriving via this path also. The signal is arriving via this path also. The signal is arriving via this path also. So the total time taken by the signal to move from here to here is minimum because now the resistance of so many paths are getting in parallel. So net resistance is getting reduced. Net resistance is getting reduced. It is as if you are creating a wire mesh. It is similar to a wire mesh. So to a single point destination, the signal may be arriving from multiple locations. So this actually reduces the resistance of the path. In a clock tree, there is only a single path, a unique path from source to destination, whereas in the mesh version, we have multiple paths making the signal to flow from source to destination. But this is also a clock tree and that is also a clock tree. But here we are putting paths in parallel. Again, similarity is that both are moving only in forward direction. But this gives you a better skew. When I say better skew means minimum skew. This gives you a better skew but then it has a highest power consumption also. This has more power consumption than the buffered clock tree. Why? Mesh version has a higher power consumption than the normal clock tree. Why? I show you this a variant of this further. Look here, a clock tree, a mesh clock tree, a grid clock tree. You have a grid clock tree over here. So one clock tree moving this way, mesh version, another clock tree moving this way. This is a grid clock tree. This has a minimum power consumption, this has a higher than that, and this has a even higher than that. Reason may be, why power consumption? You have to now look at the dynamic power consumption also, because clock is ticking. Clock is, every time there's a edge comes, there's a whole clock load has to be switched from 0 to 1 or 1 to 0. Think of a dynamic power consumption. Why mesh or the grid version has the highest power consumption? Highest power consumption. Think of the capacitive loading. Think in terms of the capacitive loading or capacitance to be switched. Capacitance to be, because power consumption is proportional to the capacitance to be switched. Every time the clock edge changes from 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. So in that scenario, maximum capacitive loading will be coming from the grid arrangement. It will be coming. I am not looking at R. I am looking only at the C. At every point. So we have a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point here. And every point is having a kind of a maximum switch. This is driving this point, this point, this point, this point, as well as this point, this point, this point, this point, as well as this point, this point. So every driver is driving all the points. For me, this is a clock driver. A buffer is a clock driver which is driving the signal forward. Which is driving the clock signal forward. So for every driver, all the points are a capacitive loading put together. So this gives you the maximum power consumption. This has, in all of three, this has a minimum power consumption. All are now moving in a, they are these two are spanning only in the forward direction. Now this spans in the four directions. Upwards as well as horizontally as well as vertically. But here you are using actually the two clock trees, one coming from this direction, other coming from this direction. Okay, so there would be a PLL which would be actually spreading the signal this way as well as spreading the signal this way also. And you have to now see, the clock skew will be a kind of a zero skew routing you will be able to achieve here. A kind of a zero skew routing. All the points will get signal at the same instant of time. Whereas here, the clock skew may be existed. You may not be able to achieve a zero skew routing. Or the signal comes here earlier and the signal here comes little later. Or the reverse. I may not be able to achieve a zero skew routing in this. But this will give me a zero skew routing, in this case residing somewhere in between this one and this one. Okay, now this is a tree. It is a variant now again. This is also a variant. Now this is moving only in the forward direction. To get a tree in forward as well as or spanning in all the four directions, you need to have two trees. You need to have two trees, or sometimes if you are so adventurous, you can even put one tree over here and one tree over here. You may. That will further reduce your skew. But then, if it is necessary, then only go for it. Otherwise, if you are working with two trees, why should we have four trees? Just to have a grid kind of a version. Now, this is a H tree. Now, this is known as H tree. You will have the clock source over here. A clock source here. Similarly, on this side there would be a clock source, and for this one also there would be a clock source. Do you mean to say I will have two clock sources, two PLLs? One for moving from left to right, other moving from top to bottom or bottom to top? Do you think I would be having two PLLs? No. Why should I create two PLLs? if I can work with a single PLL. So rather I would be having my somewhere here. The PLL, it will be driving the signal here and it will also be driving the signal here. I will try to have equal loading this way and equal loading this way. So the PLL has equal loading from both the sides. So that signal here and the signal here, they reach at the same instant of time. Rather you can create a signal here, a PLL, and then a buffered clock tree which is reaching there as well as reaching here. That's up to you. How do you design? Or I can make an H tree over here which is spanning this way and which is also spanning this way. But it has to be a tree kind of a structure. It has to be a tree. It has to keep on growing. It has to keep on growing in one direction or in 4 directions. This is an H tree. It is actually in the shape of letter H of the alphabet, as if you are spanning an H. Every time you are spanning an H. I have a PLL here. PLL signal is routed to the middle of the chip. And then it spans a H. So it moves up and it moves, gives the signal here, gives the signal here. Also it moves here, brings the signal here and brings the signal here. Then at this point, further span an H. So 4 points it is now providing the clock signal from here, and all having equal paths. All having from this point equal paths. Can you see equal loading? Equal loading. Same amount of the segment of the segment length. Same segment length. Whether it reaches, signal reaches here or here or here or here. Every time signal has to move the X dimensions. X units. Whether it is this way or it is this way or it is this way or this way. So the loading is same for all the 4 points. So I can say that from this point, signal is reaching here, 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 here at the same instant of time. If I can say that all my buffers are mismatched, they are matched. All the buffers that I am going to place, they are matched. So look from here. From this point, it has to move. Say this is X and this is Y. So X plus Y. Similarly from here, X and Y. X plus Y. Similarly from here, X and Y. So that means at the end of the day, 4 points this and these 4 and these 4 and these 4, they will be having the signal arriving at the same instant of time, because I am forcing the signal to move through the same distance. I am forcing the signal to move through the same distance. And I am keeping the width and the length of my segment clock interconnect same with my buffers as a matched devices, matched cells, which are going to be in between at the nodal points. I will have a buffer here. Wherever there is an arrow, a buffer here, a buffer here, a buffer here, a buffer here. These are my buffer points, buffer insertion points, where I would be inserting my buffers or the clock drives. Now this is spanning an H. So why not go for an X tree? They are normally the same. They give you the same performance. H tree or the X tree, they give you. So here you need to have the clock only at one point, and you have to route it to the middle of the chip, and then it spans in or towards the all 4 corners of my chip. Here it will be only moving forward. So you have to have 2 trees, one going up and one going down. This gives you more, you can say, more controlled skew. This leads to a more controlled skew permissibility. Whereas here skew at the same level you can achieve zero skew routing, but between this level and this level there would be a skew involved. I cannot have a skew matching at 2 different levels of my clock tree. Here, same thing here. At all these 4 points I will have the signal arriving at the same instant of time. But the signal arrival here and the signal arrival here, they will be having a skew. Because distances are different. So I will have this signal having the clock's edge arriving early and this one having the clock edge arriving little late. So between those, and then you have to check that between these 2 points, the skew is within. And for all these 4 points, the skew is 0 or skew is within plus minus. Skew can be positive, skew can be negative. So plus minus. Similarly, a variant, can you see a variant in which the tree is moving in the 4 different directions? An X tree. This is a H tree, but what I am doing over here, a tapered H tree, what I am doing over here? You are reducing the width of the wire. Why? Where it will help? Resistance is getting reduced. Why is it not done right from the very beginning? Why, as you are moving towards a destination, the wire lengths are getting decreased? Fan out is the same here. Every node is driving 4 segments, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Think of high-speed clock signals, where the signal is traveling at a very high speed, gigahertz clock, high-speed clock. Where it will help you? High-speed clock. Signal interconnects will be behaving like a transmission line. Interconnects will be behaving like a transmission line. So where will it help you? You are segmenting it and you are increasing the width. That means you are reducing the resistance. You are reducing the resistance. And as you are reducing the resistance, you are making it more and more capacitive kind of a interconnect. Lumped capacitive interconnect. That means this loading of this line, you can see for this buffer, it has a loading coming from these 4 points. It has a loading coming from these 4 points. A wider wire here means the loading is getting reduced. And also the segment length is also small. So I can model it like a lumped capacitor. You are able to reduce the resistance. Similarly, at high frequency, skin effect comes into picture. Resistance increases. So we want to reduce the resistance as much as possible. But you cannot have a larger width all through the CDN, because otherwise capacitance will be also be increasing. So we do it in a tapered fashion. And every buffer is reducing. So it is driving only a segment of the length, segment of the clock interconnect. It is only driving a segment of the interconnect. So for that, we are creating a uniform environment. As I said, it's only local clock skew which is important. For me, these 4 points, they should have the signal arriving at the same instant of time. Because they may be talking to each other. Transmitter will be talking to the receiver. The difference between here and here may be large. So these are all variants in which it is usually done. These two are very often used, but then nobody says that you cannot have a mix. You can go for a hybrid CDN design that every block and every sub-block can have a different. Can you see there is a PLL oscillator over here? Signal is routed here. And then it is moving to a distribution network here, a distribution network here, a distribution network here, and a distribution network here. And from every point we are calculating the skews. We are computing the skew. At every location, go on computing the skew. And try to see that whether it is remaining within the bound or not. We keep on computing the skews. So now let us start doing a very simple design. A very common picture that you will find in Rabe. Wherever there is a red, means skew is increasing. A blue means less skew, and a red is more slow. A PLL over here. Can you see a PLL over here? Through buffers, it is routed to the middle. And now it is being routed this way, this way, this way, and this way. From here it moves again this way, this way, this way, and this way. It keeps on growing. It keeps on growing. And a thermal distribution of this is shown over here. More towards the red side, larger is the skew. More towards the blue side, lesser is the skew. Cooler is a cooling. A cool region and a hot region. Hot region means the distribution clock skew is a larger value as it is reaching with respect to the PLL or with respect to the central middle point. The skew is increasing. Of hybrid, you can say mixed CDN. As I said, nobody says that you cannot mix. This is a trunk which is getting the signal from PLL. Now you distribute. Here you distribute it as H tree. It is a clock tree. It is a mesh clock tree. Now it's up to you. Within a block, what kind of version you want to have. Within a sub-block, what CDN you want to have. Within a module, what CDN you want to have. That's you decide. So nobody says that it has to be only H tree or it has to be only X tree or it has to be only the clock, the third clock. Different strategies can be chosen at different locations. All you need to see is that it is within the performance specifications of the skew. That's all. So let us see how do we, a very simple example. Very simple. These are all my destination points and there is a PLL. And I need to transmit the clock signal from here. This is my PLL to all these destination points. I could have done it by using a single driver, just one inverter, one buffer, and then all interconnect loading. Can you see so many interconnections? All these interconnections will have a C attached to it, and that C will be the capacitive loading to be driven by, say, this driver. Driver may be a buffer, maybe a super buffer, maybe a super buffer. But then this super buffer is actually going to be a chain of inverters. So what I want to now convey to you that you cannot have a single driver. You cannot have a single, only one buffer. No, driving the entire C. That will take a hell lot of time. That will be giving you a larger distribution of delays. Rather we make it, as I said, chain of inverters. Make it a super buffer. Every path length is a super buffer in its own merit. So for this load to be driven, I have a chain of inverters. For this one, a chain of inverters from here to here. So you are actually dividing the whole load into a number of drivers. So this is what is a buffered clock tree. And now you need to understand a very simple way you can also do it. How do you understand the buffer insertion points? Where to place the buffer? Elmos delay formula. Simple we say. Or the minimum delay condition. What's the minimum delay condition? What is the minimum delay condition? That is segment length equal to the segment delay equal to the buffer. Decide on segment length based on the segment delay equal to the buffer delay, or find out L critical, which is root of tau buffer by 0.4 RC. That much segment length you can choose, and then after that much segment length you put a R. Okay, but then for this length I can choose. What about the width? What about the width? Should width be equal to length? How much length, how much width I can have? I need to now decide on the width of my clock interconnect or clock segments. So how do you decide? How do you decide what W I should choose? Should it be minimum? Should it be twice the minimum? Should it not be twice the minimum, maybe 4 times? How do you decide? I need to now do a little bit of calculations. So how do we decide? So we say, okay, there's a total skew. And I say total skew I know is going to be the skew because of mismatch in devices and mismatch in loading from the wires. So let me say total skew I budget as a buffer delay, skew due to buffer delays, mismatched buffer delays, because now buffers are also part of CDN, and another skew is because of the wire delays, segment delays. So let me say the total skew TS is because of buffer mismatched buffer delays, and the skew because of mismatched wire delays coming from mismatched wire segments. However large I try, still I can have a mismatched wire segments. In process variations will always be there. Similarly, I can have a mismatched. I can have the matching of the buffer, same circuit I can use only at the schematic level. At the layout, during process variations, even the buffer devices, WBRs will change. So buffer delays will also change. So let me budget the total skew. The period is over. Okay. The total skew is actually I am budgeting a part of it to the buffer and the part of it to the mismatch in the wire. Then I am concerned about this wire, because this wire now I need to think. L I can say, okay, L is according to L critical, but then what is width? What is width? I need to decide on that. Should it be minimum? Should it not be minimum? I need to know, check on that. So we shall see that condition in the next class. Okay, so who are my TA for? So you will be given the key for OLAB.